Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. Elise Cannon. It's Saturday, October 14th. Today is day 8 of the war between Hamas and Israel. I'd encourage you, I've been posting these every day since the war began. I'd encourage you to go to Churches for Middle East Peace, to look at our past statements, to see our condemnations, to see our calls to action. So today's update, in the last day or so, Israel called on the people in Gaza in the north, 1.1 million people, called on the people in North Gaza to evacuate to South Gaza. It's about a 26 mile distance. And one of the things that we've been hearing, and we still are in touch with some of our friends and colleagues in Gaza. Some of them have been able to get out. Some of them were out of the territory and have not been able to return. And one of the things that we've been hearing is hundreds of thousands of people have moved south. There was a great concern by the United Nations and others that it is virtually impossible in a 24-hour period of time to move, more than 1 million people that distance, particularly when, it's a very urban environment. But we've heard from people that there actually have been attacks from Israel into Gaza in the areas where people are moving to. And so people have, been saying, well, we thought we were moving to safety and then we're being attacked. And so there's great concern. And other civilians in Gaza have said, we'd rather die in our homes, than die in a camp with our family. There's a conversation still about the Rafah border to Egypt, and there have been conversations about humanitarian corridors. And one of the largest concerns, the United States initially had discussed the possibility of putting a humanitarian corridor in the Sinai, and Egypt strongly opposes that, as do many humanitarian organizations, because the fear is that the Palestinian population in Gaza would be displaced into the Sinai Peninsula and would never be allowed to return. And so the term for that, and the term for what's happening at a minimum, is ethnic cleansing, that there is an attempt to displace this entire people group. And Egypt actually doesn't even want to open the border to Rafah at all, because now this population group of, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, it's right there at the border. And so if they open up the Rafah border for humanitarian access or for limited access, they're afraid that there will be a flood, either of people, seeking to leave. The question of Rafah's gate, border being open or not, is one that is ongoing. There continues to be the siege on Gaza, where water has been completely shut off. Gas and electricity are completely shut off. And many people are running out of basic necessities, from diapers to baby formula to food. And every day that the siege continues, it gets worse and worse. And so you are looking, and the world is watching 2.2 million people who are being shut off from the basic necessities of life, while being under attack by bombs. And so Israel reported that in the last week, they've dropped 6,000 bombs on Gaza in their commitment to end the rule of Hamas. There was also a report in the Washington Post, and Human Rights Watch has reported a claim that Israel is using white phosphorus, which is considered illegal by international law. And it is considered a war crime. White phosphorus is a chemical that ignites when it's exposed to oxygen, bursting into extremely hot flames that are difficult to put out and that produce copious amounts of thick white smoke. It's contained inside artillery shells, bombs, and rockets, and it causes severe burns, often down to the bone. It's very slow to heal, and it can develop infections. And so that has not been substantiated, but it has been reported. Yesterday, on Friday, Hamas called for what's called a day of rage, a day of protests. And so around the world, in the Middle East and other parts of the world, there have been protests, pro-Palestinian protests, and then, pro-Israeli protests on college campuses or in cities around the world. France made it illegal to have pro-Palestinian protests. And so there have been articles about what that looks like in different places around the world as well. One of the things I wanted to be sure to talk about today, or at least to make mention of, is please, 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 as you're reading social media and as you're engaging, be attentive to fake news. One of the ways to do that is to research and see, you can even say, like typing in, is it true? There are websites that are seeking to address questions media is calling this the fog of war, because there is so much that's being reported or shared, even in the media, but also on social media, that's being used in the rhetoric all the way up to the White House that has not necessarily been substantiated. And so you probably heard one of the biggest cases where there is a question of, did this happen or not, is the question of the dozens, and forgive me because it's so horrific, but the question of whether or not Hamas actually decapitated, dozens of babies. And so this has been said, even President Biden stated, that he had seen pictures of children that were beheaded by Hamas. And the White House stepped back this week and said, well, he had read that in the news, or and so there's a question of whether or not that happened. And certainly children were killed, and it was horrific. But it's a significant challenge of how do you get news about what's really happening, and how do we know, and what news sources do we trust? And so one of the ways we try to do that is, I do look, what does the Israeli Defense Forces say? And so sometimes all you might get is the Israeli Defense Forces can't substantiate it. The Israeli Defense Forces, in terms of white phosphorus, their response was, I think it was that we have no knowledge of having used white phosphorus, was their response that was mentioned from my recollection in that Washington Post article, for example. So be attentive to that. There was just a piece someone sent me on CNN about a CNN reporter faking being under a bombing attack, and it actually was a doctored video, and the CNN reporter actually, that's not what happened. And so I went to CNN, and you could see the actual video, and that was a way to kind of see, try to understand what's happening. I wanted to let you know a little bit about what's happening with some of the Christians in Gaza. The number of Christians is just over 1,000. I think the official count is 1,017 Christians that live in Gaza. I was there last year, and I met Father Gabriele Romanelli, who is a Catholic priest of the Holy Family Parish in Gaza. He's not in Gaza right now. He was out of the territory when the war started, but there was a conversation with him that was published and distributed, and they're one of the Catholic Church is one of our partners. And I just wanted to share with you some of the things he shared. He said that many Christians are currently being welcomed by the church. They're residents of this area that's called Ramal, and they've been subjected to violent bombardment. He was informed that 4 of their families have lost their homes that have been destroyed already by the war, and so they're currently living in the building of the church. The church has opened up 3 of its spaces to receive those who are in need, and there's currently more than 150 individuals staying at the church and the monastery building. The second area is at the St. Thomas Aquinas Center that's hosting another 30 individuals. And then the third area is the Holy Family School, where they've welcomed a whole nother group of people. And the religious sisters of the area, the Sisters of the Incarnate Word, the Rosary Sisters, and the Sisters of Charity, have been serving and assisting families to the best of their abilities. To the question of, did they have enough food, and did they have enough water and electricity, he said they're faced with a shortage. This report, I should say, is also from October 11th. So this is from Wednesday. So since then, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's been 3 days since this report. Regarding electricity, just like other Gazans, they have limited access to electricity just for very short periods of time, and fuel is running out. So they expect that they won't have electricity for much longer. They don't have enough water. They're trying to use it wisely and to ration it and to only use it for drinking. Everyone knows and sees the destruction and devastation that's been left by the war, and there are barely any supplies left. They almost don't exist. They're not able to buy anything, and the needs of the people are not being met. They did receive a call from His Holiness Pope Francis, and he spoke with them and assured them of his support, that he let them know that he and Christians around the world are praying that God Almighty would offer help in their time of need and would bring an end to this horrific war. And we are praying that same prayer as well. And so they were grateful to have received that word. And then any last remarks that Father Gabriel wanted to share, and he said this: the outcome of this war is devastating. We hope that it comes to an end quickly and that it would stop right now. The post-war deterioration in the health sector and other systems will have an impact on normal lives whenever the war does come to an end in the Gaza Strip, not to mention the psychological impacts, the fear, and the disorders that people will have to live with for the rest of their lives. So many people suffer. We ask that everyone, that every official, that every person do everything they can with their utmost efforts to stop this war immediately. We ask the faithful everywhere, please unite with us in prayer. We're grateful for the appeal made by Cardinal Pizzaballa, that next Tuesday will be a day of fasting, abstinence, and intercession to cry out to God for this war to be brought to an end, and that God might bring about peace. And so that's our invitation as well. Join us at Churches for Middle East Peace. We've been saying stand in the gap, give, act, and pray. Give to organizations that are doing direct relief work in Gaza, the Catholic Relief Services, the American Friends of the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem gives to Ali Hospital. World Vision does incredible work. I mean, there's amazing groups that are doing work and doing humanitarian assistance. Support organizations like ours, Churches for Middle East Peace. We're addressing systemic issues. We're calling on the government that our policies might not support war, but might support the end of war and the end of the brutality that is continuing, to affect so many people in Gaza, which ultimately has a devastating effect, of course, for the people of Israel as well. So stand in the gap, give, act, and pray. Act, we have an action alert. Go to our website, www.cmep.org. So take action, share our posts on social media, tell people about us, pass the word that we don't have to enter into conversations about this war in a spirit of hatred, that we can absolutely condemn the actions of Hamas, full stop, period. And we can condemn and say the war must be brought to an end. And we detest the bombing of civilians in Gaza. And we call for water to be turned on, because water is a source of life, and that this war must be brought to an end. And so join us in action in calling on our members of Congress to call for an end to this war. And prayer is really our greatest hope. And so we have regular prayer meetings every Wednesday. You can go to our website to find out about those. Join us. It's a collective prayer. Thursdays, we do a briefing. And so we'll continue to keep you informed, or we'll do our best to continue to keep you informed. We're learning as well. We'll continue to pray. We'll continue to work. And we won't give up hope. It's hard to not give up hope, but we won't give up hope. And we'll have faith in the God of the universe, who is the God of peace, that he would bring his peace and his justice and an end to this horrific war.